Good afternoon. Today we're joined by John Reed from the Rochester International Airport to tell us a little bit about his career and the airport itself. So thank you for joining us, John. I hope you're having a wonderful day and love to hear a little bit more about you and the airport.
Good to see you too, Mike. Strange world we're living in, talking via Zoom across town. So good to be here. Glad to help FutureForward and the organization that you work with.
So, John, what made you decide to get into the airlines or the airline industry career path?
Yeah, well, a probably more accurate description is aviation.
Perfect.
It's the word airline's a bit narrow. Even the word airport's a bit narrow. For me, I've always enjoyed the coming and the going, and I think having a few relatives in the aviation industry, a few people that I knew when I was young, kind of naturally moved me in that direction. Had the opportunity to go to a school that had an aviation program and very competitive to get into that. And I competed, I got into the program, and really it was for me. I was hooked from the minute go. Where it's taken me is probably, a hair bit different than the education itself. I went in looking at being a pilot for a living. I also, in addition to getting my pilot's license, I also got an aircraft and power plant mechanics license from the FAA while I was there. And as I really began to look at what I really wanted to do, the management side of aviation, which I found just incredibly exciting, it was where I was really just drawn to. And so that's how it really started with me. I, moved through an incredible series and progression of jobs in a career, and in a field that essentially requires you to move. Your chances of staying in one location for your entire career are pretty slim. Usually, if you're going to move up, for the most part, you have to move on and be willing and able to do that.
So that's a great place to start, John. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about exactly what that career path looked like and what those moves were as you were moving up?
Absolutely. Maybe we start with education.
Yep.
First. I went to a very small school in southern Missouri called the College of the Ozarks. I was glad to be accepted into that school. It's a work-study school, and I worked my way through school right there on campus. And part of that, was the aviation program. And I actually got to physically work at the airport. So it's one of my very first jobs in aviation was as a lineman, a line technician, as it would be in today's verbiage, working for the college. And so I moved planes, fueled up planes, I put them into hangars at night. I mopped floors, cleaned toilets, collected money, essentially ran that airport, and was excited to get to move to the airports and go to work as part of my career. From there, graduation for me was in 1990. Jobs were pretty tough as there was a recession going on. And I could see that. So in 1989, I actually started, while in undergraduate school, I started taking classes towards my master's degree on the weekends. Would go up to the University of Central Missouri, up near Kansas City. and I would take weekend classes and evening classes. And by the time I graduated undergraduate in 1990, I had quite a few credits towards a master's degree. And then I went back up to Warrensburg and finished my finished my master's degree in aviation science, aviation safety from the University of Central Missouri. Finished there in May of 1991. I was a graduate assistant while I was there. And my very first job was for the Missouri Highway and Transportation Department out of Jefferson City, Missouri. I was an airport inspector. Very small department, 6 people. I was employee number 6. They offered opportunities for me to begin to really cut my teeth in that very first job. They let me fly their planes or plane, and I got to travel the whole state and worked with the airport people directly, doing inspections of their facilities for regulatory compliance, worked hand in hand with engineers and planners for development, and spent most of my days literally out on the road for almost 5 years. From there, I moved to Nevada in a similar but different role. I was a planner, aviation planner in Nevada. Again, I got to fly planes, spent a lot of time working with rural airports, but even more time working in the Las Vegas area, again, with airports directly. Did that for 2 years and was really looking for a change, wanted to get directly into airport management. Started looking around, ended up accepting a job in the Rio Grande Valley of Texas. Brownsville, South Padre Island International Airport is the assistant airport director. Worked for a friend of mine who I had interned for back when I was getting a master's degree, and was the assistant director of aviation, again in Brownsville, and really got to begin to learn and see outside of the roles that I was used to, airport operations, and dived just head deep into the work that I had there. Accomplished a lot while we were down there. Rebuilt the terminal, built a flood control project, rebuilt runways, built cargo service, built international service. Besides the domestic service that we had, we attracted service to Mexico City through Monterrey, Mexico. Did a lot of work on the cargo logistics transportation side with our partners. Spent a decent amount of time in Mexico working, even though I lived in the US, and really was able to learn a lot while I was there. And after about 5 years, accepted an opportunity as the assistant airport director in Green Bay, Wisconsin, for Austin Straubel International Airport. Spent 13 years in there, thoroughly enjoyed my time living in Green Bay and working at that airport. A different style of operation, and an airport that was more centered and focused on commercial transportation, whereas the airport in Brownsville was really centered on cargo operations and domestic. Got an opportunity to work with 7, 8 different airlines while I was there. Built a brand new terminal, rebuilt both runways. Really had an opportunity to redevelop and hone our operations and maintenance departments, and learned a lot about supervising, even more about supervising while I was in that position. And then 5 years ago, almost 6 years ago, Then had the opportunity to come to Rochester, Minnesota as the executive director of Rochester International Airport, which has been a blessing for sure. And have had a great opportunity here to get some real key critical projects done. Biggest being the runway 22 project, which we're 220 project, which we're about to start on. $79.2 million project. It's a multi-year opportunity to rebuild some of our infrastructure, and also had the opportunity to get a U.S. Customs facility done, which is critical to our community as a whole. So that's just a rough recap of where I've been for almost the past 30 plus years in about 5 minutes.
That's great, John. And one of the things that I don't want to is you talked a lot about your experiences, and I want to know kind of how those experiences and what you learned as you were moving through your other roles helped you with what you're doing right now, helped you with the Rochester International Airport, information as far as cargo and construction projects and things like that, how that has worked as you've become airport manager.
Well, the saying is that an airport manager wears many different hats, and that's very true. It's a balance of community. It's a balance of service. It's a balance of understanding government, working with private industry, the ability to get and understand projects, ability to get and understand business, construction. So it's an incredible blend of skills that you need to bring to the table to actually fit any role I've ever been in. A lot of them are so community orientated and forward facing in the community. I think it's just time in the saddle to move up in this particular venue of the industry.
So what kind of high school classes, you're talking primarily to high school students here, what kind of classes would you suggest someone take in high school if they're interested in getting into the aviation industry, specifically aviation management?
I think a good, well-balanced education is important. I think, as I look back on my high school career and where I shined and where I didn't shine, I think your good basics are very important. And take your math classes, take your science classes, take your English classes. Those are just basic things that I use every day. All that said, enjoy high school. Plan for your next step, which is college. And I know that's changed a lot since I've been there. Talk to your guidance counselors. If aviation is what you want to do, understand where your target schools are at and what their requirements are, and tailor your high school education to that goal, if that's where you want to be. Even if it comes later, those good base skills, math, English, written English, spoken English, are definitely important. If you have an opportunity to take governmental classes to understand how government works and how it functions, it's important. Understanding how your own local government works, your state legislative body, as well as how the federal government functions. Good, solid understanding of those is another important venue.
So one of the things that you referenced, John, is that while you were in college, uh, you did some work on what I would call more of the technical side of aviation as well. How do you feel like having an understanding of that technical side of aviation, that repair side of aviation, uh, helps you in your current role?
I think it's the experiences. I think becoming a private pilot and taking those classes is a great gateway to the venue of aviation that I went into. Gives me an understanding of what a pilot's talking about when you're conversing with them in their language. Gives you skills and understanding what you're building and why you're building it. Because in the end, you're really building it for the aviation sector, and the rubber meets the runway with pilot. So a good understanding of what a pilot is doing is really best garnered through becoming a pilot. Even if it's just becoming a private pilot. I still have my license. I'm not active in it, but it's given me a good understanding of why I'm here. And so, yeah, I would encourage those that want to do that. At the very least, take some introductory flights. But I would encourage them definitely to, at the very least, go get their private pilot's license if they're going to go into aviation management.
So one of the things that you referenced is that you went to an aviation specific school. Is that a requirement to do what you're doing right now, or how does it work?
No, it's not. There are people in the industry that have come from other areas and from other educational backgrounds. I would say the vast majority, though, began this career through an introduction through college in specific aviation programs. And those programs over the past 30 years have really accelerated and developed and honed what they're doing. And if you want a quick and fast entry into the system, go to an aviation school. It opens up so many doors for you. Do you want to work for an airline? Do you want to run an airport? Do you want to be in air traffic control? Do you want to work for private industry in aviation? There are so many jobs. Even today, during the pandemic, there is still a pilot shortage. And there's still technical shortages. There are shortages of mechanics, shortages in the specialty fields within aviation, be it technical or not. A great field, a good paying field that will open up a lot of doors for you. I have friends that work internationally that aren't pilots. And it's just the way the career has taken them over time, the doors that opened.
So one of the things you talked about, and you referenced it there a little bit as well, is the willingness to be able to, or the willingness to move to do your work. I want you to talk just a little bit about what those transitions are like, and what you think about when you're making a determination on whether or not you're going to move for that next role.
Sure. These are things that I've never made in a vacuum. These are decisions, that I don't make by myself. I was married, making these decisions in conjunction with my wife. Some of them were career driven. Some of these decisions over time were family driven. Those are kind of personal decisions for yourself. But on the business side of it and, progression of a career, there was always that next level that I was looking for. In the end, whether I really knew it in the very beginning or not, this was my goal. was to run, an airport and be at the leading edge of that. And all those moves over time were driven by that. And I think some of it becomes personal, with you and your family. Some of it's career driven. You got to find those balances for yourself. Is this what you want to do? And even if it's an interim move in your career ladder, know what your goal is and where you're going and what you want to do. If your career is to work in airport operations for your entire life, that's great. Know what those career moves are for yourself and where you want to be in the end and why you're making a strategic move for yourself, because that's what they are. They're strategic moves for you and your family, for better earning power, or I just want to live here. It's a pretty simplistic way to look at it. But in the end, you need to be happy, enjoy what you're doing, and earn a living along the way.
So one of the things, and you and I have known each other for a little bit of time, and one of the things that I find very interesting is coming from Green Bay, which is kind of a tourism focused area, to Rochester, which is kind of a medical community focus. What are some similarities in that destination type of what are some similarities in that destination-based location that you've seen, and what are some major differences that you've seen between what goes on in those two communities?
Sure. Well, I mean, the old saying of if you've seen one airport, you've seen one airport is true. And the same goes for municipalities. And when you're looking at an airport management job, knowing what is really going on in your community is really important. Green Bay in particular had several different main industries: paper manufacturing, machine manufacturing, trucking, insurance. Were some of the big local industries. Beyond that, tourism, NFL tourism was huge, as well as just accessibility to the Great Lakes. So that's what our real focus was on. Rochester, in its own way, is again attracting, just like any other community. It just happens to be that the medical side of what Rochester does is a very big draw for passengers, for us, patients for us, that are coming to our community. Similar, but the same. Rochester, for the most part, has a good steady stream pretty much year round. It does ebb and flow up and down. Green Bay in particular, the NFL schedule at the time, they'd have 8 home games. So you were exceptionally busy on those 8 weekends. And for me, during those weekends, I just didn't turn off. I worked nonstop in support of the passengers, be they commercial aviation or general aviation, that were coming in and out all the time. Rochester, it does have commercial service. Delta, American, United do fly in and out of here. We also have a couple other unique aspects that weren't really featured in Green Bay. One of those is air cargo. We do get a daily 757 in here coming from Memphis with deliveries from around the world that are, coming to the nation and almost the world's #1 hospital. Critical on-time deliveries. And then we have another aspect that you do have in Green Bay, but not to this intensity, which is the general aviation use. So we do get people that come here internationally on their own aircraft, as well as business people from around the U.S. That are making their way here on very large general aviation aircraft. So some similarities. You contrast that back to South Texas, where I worked. That was really around just-in-time delivery of cargo, operating in a foreign trade zone in conjunction with NAFTA, the manufacturing of automobile parts in northern Mexico, into planes that were in Brownsville and coming back into the upper Midwest to become a car. A real front row seat there on NAFTA in the manufacturing world. So similarities and differences in a lot of the places that I've worked.
Can you talk a little bit about, and you've certainly referenced this, but can you talk a little bit about the soft skills that are necessary to do the work that you do right now?
Absolutely. Communication is probably the number one soft skill. The ability to tell your story about what you really need to accomplish and why it needs to be done, and the importance of that is really critical to what you're doing. If I was going to list the number one soft skill, it's definitely communication, without any discussion.
So is there anything else that you think that a student who is watching this needs to know that maybe we haven't referenced already today?
Well, we do have some incredible opportunities here right now for somebody who's got an interest. We worked in conjunction with Rochester Community Technical College and Great Plains Aviation. And we now have a 2-year flight school program through the community college, which offers you the ability to come get your private pilot, your instrument pilot's license, and your commercial pilot's license. So if you have just an inkling and maybe not a full direction about what facet of aviation you want to work in, this is an incredible opportunity for a student to come and explore it and get their private pilot's license and really be exposed to the world of aviation. And I jokingly say you get to smell the jet fuel every day. And for me, it's a bit intoxicating to be out in and among the planes, understand what's going on. And frankly, it gives me a lot of joy when I do see students up learning something that I learned 30 plus years ago. So you've got a unique opportunity right here in Olmsted County, Rochester, right here at RST Airport, to begin that journey, or at least take a look at it. If you've got an inkling for this industry as a whole, come take a look. You never know where it might finally lead you down the road. Again, we referenced it earlier. What started out for me as a technical education, and becoming a professional pilot or working on the aircraft on the technical side, really blossomed into running an airport. There are so many opportunities in this field.
So one of the things you referenced before, and I don't believe we touched on this previously. If we did, feel free to stop me. But one of the things you referenced before, and I've heard you say it a lot of times, is if you've seen one airport, you've seen one airport. Is that the same way with what your days look like? Is there really such thing as an average day for you? And if there is, what does your average day look like?
I can't say that I have an average day, and I think that's one of the things that's attractive to what I do to me. Obviously there's, in any job, there's some of the mundane things that have to be done. I enjoy the development side. I actually enjoy the business side of what we do. But you're moving from planning to speaking with people who do want to start businesses, to working with tenants, working with airlines, working with car rental companies, working with Uber, Lyft, ground transportation, parking operations, fixed-based operators, which is like a big gas station for airlines and aircraft. And we work with farmers. You name it, we're involved in it. So for me, to get the ability to spend a full day and concentrate on one subject is pretty rare. The ability to do some multitasking is imperative.
Thank you, John. I appreciate it very much. And I know the students who watch this will appreciate it as well. And as we referenced in a previous part of the conversation, if anybody wants to get in touch with you, you would suggest they talk to their teacher and then just let them know, and that's the best way to get in touch with you.
Absolutely. Reach out to your teacher, reach back into Mike. And if someone has a real interest, I'm always open to sit down and have a good conversation with a young person wanting to break into this field or just wanting to learn more about it. This is where it begins. It's the youth of today that will be running an airport somewhere when I am old and gray and needing to come back to Minnesota for healthcare.
Thank you, John. And I appreciate it. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
You as well, Mike. Really appreciate your time. Thank you.